Okay, so what would prove Hume wrong? Did anyone come up with a proposition that is neither analytic nor synthetic? I mean a meaningful one, a true proposition, something that can be tested, something can matter, or one that's both analytic and synthetic? Right. Okay, so we couldn't come up with any evidence that this was wrong. Does that mean it's not wrong? Does that mean we know this for certain? No, because there could be some proposition out there. I don't know of any way of ruling this out. I mean, my position on this is I cannot imagine a proposition that is neither analytic nor synthetic. I've been thinking about this for years, and I find myself unable to imagine a proposition that's neither analytic nor synthetic, right? Or one that's both. It just would seem so weird to me. It would be a mind-bending thing. But that doesn't mean that one doesn't exist, only that I can't think of it. Lots of things that I couldn't imagine are actually true, and I was really surprised when they turned out to be true. So the fact I can't imagine something. So we don't know. The analytic-synthetic distinction seems to be holding up so far, but we're not absolutely certain it's true. We're not certain that sometime in the future something won't come along and refute it. So, right, now we talked, before the break, I talked about how this distinction knocked down the argument for Cartesian dualism, or Descartes' argument for Cartesian dualism. Does it knock down his argument for God? Does it knock down his argument for the reliability of the senses, or his argument for the existence of the external world? Well, what do those arguments depend on? Right? What is the basic premise for that huge argument that Descartes made about the existence of God and the existence of the external world and the reliability of the senses, or vice versa? What about the cogito? Right? Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I exist. Or what about the perfection argument? Does this rule those arguments out? Well, looking at the cogito ergo sum, Descartes starts with something that he experiences. Not something he experiences through the senses, but something he experiences more directly than a sensory experience. He experiences himself thinking. Right. Have you ever been in a completely dark room and not really noticed anything outside your own mind? Right. Sometimes I'm lying in bed and I'm lying there, and having my eyes open is the same as having my eyes closed. And I'm thinking, are my eyes open or are they closed? And I check, and it's like, oh, they're open and I can't see anything. Now they're closed and I can't see anything. Well, I'm not experiencing any visual stimuli really, except darkness. But I am experiencing myself thinking about that, right? It's the most direct experience you can have. It's the only direct experience you can have, is the experience of your own thoughts. That seems like experience, right? It's not sense data in the sense that it's mediated by the senses. It's more immediate than that. And so that would seem to be data. So thinking exists because thinking exists. And Descartes is exactly right that he can't be wrong about him doubting his own existence. I doubt that I am doubting. That's a weird, impossible doubt. Right? If I doubt the existence of my hat, I could be wrong about the hat existing or not existing, but I can't be wrong about doubting the existence. And so that seems to be like very immediate evidence. It's evident to me that that's right. And so the cogito seems to survive this test. I might be wrong, but it seems like the cogito involves one little bit of evidence, the evidence that Descartes is actually thinking. What about the concept of perfection argument? Well, again, I had this concept in my mind. That's a fact. That's a piece of evidence that I can go with. I can't be wrong that I have the concept of perfection, because to have the concept is just to have the concept. So it seems like this distinction doesn't knock down, does not knock down the cogito or the perfection argument, because they have a starting point that's sort of something that's evident to you, an existence. You've got right the existence of a thought, and you sense your own thoughts, right? Does that mean seem like a okay? So this does not knock down those. Just those don't seem to be purely conceptual reasoning. Right. So now I want to talk about the two criticisms of Hume. There are two arguments against Hume. There's the so-called causality weakness, or the causality, I'm going to call it causality objection, because I don't really think that Hume's argument is weak. I think Hume's argument is very strong. Apparently, Hume figured this one out for himself and promoted it and described it as a problem with his theory. And I want to see if it really is a problem with his theory. So, this is called the causality objection. That's what I'm calling it. Right, now I'm going to make an argument, and as quite often I do, I'm going to give the argument, and I'm going to try and present it as a strong argument, and then afterwards I'm going to tell you what I think is wrong with it. So here's this thing of sort of like, I lay out the argument the way I think it most deserves to be laid out and make it as strong as I can, and then I'll come back and criticize it and say why I think the argument doesn't work. So here's the argument. Claim causality exists is not synthetic. Causality exists is not analytic, the argument says. Third, the claim causality exists, the proposition causality exists, is meaningful. Right. So we have this phrase, causality exists. It means something. It's not analytic, so the argument says. It's not synthetic, so the argument goes. But it's meaningful. If Hume's theory is correct, can all three of these be true at the same time? What did I say would prove that Hume is wrong. It would be a proposition that was meaningful, especially a proposition that is true, but not analytic and not synthetic. And so this argument says Hume is wrong. Now, I don't believe this argument works, and I'm going to try and explain why I don't think it works as we go through it. Now, causality exists. You guys know what I mean by causality? Cause and effect, right? Well, later, in a little bit, we'll go on to what is really deeply meant by causality. And that's something we have to do to analyze this argument, is really think hard about what is meant by the term causality, or the term that causality exists. But we have a lot of beliefs about causality. For instance, we believe that cigarette smoking causes cancer. Right? We believe that a causal relationship exists between cigarette smoking and cancer. Right. We believe that a causal relationship exists between the amount of food you eat and the size of your body, the amount of weight, how much you weigh. Right. In fact, all of science is a description of causal relationships. If X happens, it will be followed by Y. So this means something to us, because what would the world be like if causality didn't exist? Well, on our understanding of the way the world works, if causality didn't exist, we couldn't make anything happen. Pushing a button wouldn't start this video player. You know, me moving my hand wouldn't make the pen go up. Right? Nothing could be accomplished if causality didn't exist. So we have a very strong belief that causality exists, right? Does anyone here believe that you can't make stuff happen? That you can't intervene in the stream of events and change them? I don't think this. It seems like an insane belief. Then there's the claim that causality exists is not analytic. Okay, so imagine you write down the definitions of causality and existence. Is there anything in the definition of causality that says it has to exist? Well, what has Hume said about proving things exist or not? Can you do it by conceptual reasoning? Does Hume say that you can prove that something exists by analyzing a concept or analyzing its own concept? Hume doesn't say that. In fact, he explicitly denies it. Hume is going to tell you that the claim causality exists cannot possibly be analytic. But he also says that he believes it's not synthetic. Hume says there is no sense data for causality. There's sense data for stuff happening, and there's sense data for stuff happening and then other stuff happening after it, but there's no sense data for causes. He says there's no sense data to which we can trace the idea of a cause. Now this is actually very brilliant, because this is something that's very hard to see. if you watch film, right? You watch film of event, film of a car crash, film of an airplane flying, or somebody knocking someone else down. We always look at that and we say we're seeing cause and effect. If you saw someone, right? If someone rushed in here and hit me with, I don't know, a huge pillow. Hit me with a huge pillow, really thumped me, and I fell down, you'd think he'd caused me to fall down, right? But what Hume says is what we see is repeated seriality. We see one thing happening, then another thing, but we don't see the causing part. Now understand this. Think about this. Suppose that I have access to a lot of mannequins, posable mannequins, unlimited resources. I can get all kinds of machinery, and I can have very lifelike dummies made, posable dummies, and I have a lot of time on my hands and mad skills for special effects. Okay. Suppose, it could happen. Suppose that I took posable mannequins, like dummies and things that looked really, really human, and I spent like a year recreating a game of pool, so that I have the mannequins and I pose them in various little poses, move, pose, move. You know how they make stop motion animation? Move, snap, move, snap, move, snap, move, snap, move, snap, move, snap. Right, and I've got the balls for pool balls, the balls on the pool table, and I got them and I put them in various positions, and I take a picture, and I move the mannequins a little and take a picture. This would be incredibly boring. I would go insane after doing this for like 2 minutes. But let's say that I have a very high tolerance for boredom, I have infinite patience, and I manage to carry this out so that I make a film that if you look at it, it's indistinguishable from an actual game of pool. And I make it very high definition. You can see all the angles, and the sound quality is very good. And you have exactly the same experience that you would have watching a video of an actual game of pool. And in fact, I take a video of an actual game of pool, and then I show you both movies. And if you imagine that I'm really, really good, or I have a crew to help me, that's more realistically, I have a crew to help me, they make this stop-motion anime with dummies that are indistinguishable from it. Is it completely implausible that you would have, the dummies that would fool you? The Hollywood Wax Museum and stuff like that, and stuff. It's these perfect dummies. And so I have this video of a real game of pool, and then I have a video of these animated dummies playing a game of pool, and I put in sound and comics. Maybe I'll make my fake one. It's just based on the real one. It's just a copy of it. And I'm really, really good at it, so that everything you see in the video is exactly what you would see in the real pool game. Now, is anyone out there saying, that's impossible? Because no matter even if the illusion was perfect, we would see or hear something that was different in the real game of pool. You know the little click when the balls hit each other, right? I've got that in my fake film. I've got exactly that sound. It's synthetic. I didn't actually bang pool balls together. I reproduced it based on digitization of the original sounds. But you hear the same sound, right? You see the same thing. Is there something that happens when one pool ball hits another? The cue ball hits the 8 ball. Is there something that happens there that cannot be faked in stop-motion animation? Is there some sensory experience? Or imagine that I had a huge set of dominoes that were on a table but instead of having just actual dominoes set up on their ends, it's actually fake. There's little wires coming up through the table into the dominoes, and there's little servo motors underneath that would make the dominoes fall over. And suppose I can set it up with a computer program that knocks all the dominoes down in sequence, and it looks like one domino is knocking down the other, and I've got recorded sounds, but if you can't see it, but they're not actually touching each other. Right. Would the real thing have any discernible difference from the fake? Is there anything you look at and say, that caused that? Is it the case that we make mistakes about causality? Right? Have you ever made a causal mistake or thought someone caused me? There was this idea once that cell phones. Yeah, Garrett.
I was going to say for that dominoes thing. Can you say that a flaw would make it real? Could you
I could put a flaw in the fake.
And so it would still be considered.
Yeah, you can build in all the flaws. I mean, the fake pool players, some of them will have zits, and I'll have one scratch himself when he, you can do that, and someone bends over the table, or you hear a fart noise. Right. Anything that you could think of that would be a detail that would make the scene can be built into the fake.
The answer would be no, then.
Yeah, the answer is no. And this is what Hume is saying. There's no sensory experience, right, that distinguishes repeated seriality, A follows B, from A causing B, or vice versa. B follows A from A causes B. Yes, Rodrigo.
So that would be like as far as you seeing it?
Yeah, as far as you're seeing it.
Because in reality, like you said, like for your example, to make sense, the domino can't hit the other one to make it tip over. It has to be like a motor that just kind of goes down.
Yeah, right.
So if you're seeing it, you're not seeing it. Like you're seeing it and it looks like it's causing each other to fall over. But then in reality, like, it's not. So
Yeah, right. The reality, what I'm trying to get at is that there are circumstances where we can fake causality. Right. Hume is saying that it might be like massive coincidence. Well, what he's saying is, look, we see one billiard ball rolling along here. It intersects the location of the other billiard ball. We hear a click, and the other billiard ball starts moving. The pool balls. Right, and we see all that, and none of that is the cue ball causing the 8 ball to move. It's just the cue ball moves and then stops, and the 8 ball starts moving. That's what we see. We don't see the cause. And that's Hume's argument against himself, is that there's no sensory experience, there's an experience of a cause. So that's why he says causality exists, is not synthetic, and that's why he thinks this is an argument against his program. Right? But the argument depends crucially on these two premises. Causality exists is not synthetic, not based on sense data. Causality exists is meaningful. Suppose we had someone in the room who actually believed this argument. I don't know of anyone who does, but suppose we had someone in the room who actually believes this argument and gave the same talk I just did. So imagine me splitting into two people. And the one person says, look, this is meaningful. This is something we know to be true. What's the question I'm going to ask him? I'm going to ask him, how do we know this is true? How do we know causality exists? Why do we think causality exists? Is this something we have as religious faith? Is this something we see as stemming from definitions? Why do we believe in causality? Why do we believe that smoking causes cancer, and why do we believe that cell phones do not cause cancer?